All right, so thanks everyone for joining us this evening. Um, I want this session to be an open discussion. So the approach I'll take is, as you see on the screen here, the four sections that we'll be looking at. I'll share how I've approached it over the years, and then I'll allow you to chime in to say how you have approached these workflow processes. So as photographers, we try and develop routines or workflows that help us to be as productive as we can to ensure that we create the images that we want or to deliver a high quality product to our customers for those who offer their photography as a business. So getting that workflow that allows you to be both productive and efficient in the tasks that you're doing helps us to be better photographers. The first thing I'd like to look at is how we plan our shoots. So for me, I've used a few tools over the years. Some of the more popular ones that I've used, Google Keep and Microsoft OneNote. Um, Microsoft OneNote comes with most Windows installations now, so that's an easy and free tool to use. If you have a Google account, you have access to Google Keep, which is their version of the note-keeping app. I've recently started using an app called Notion, which offers some unique features, but still allows that note-taking capability. Just to show an example, so I'm currently doing a course online called Practical Ethical Hacking. So Notion allows you to structure your note-taking using pages and subpages. So far, these are three of the modules that I've completed so far. So each page is going to allow you to store the notes that you want pertaining to that topic. With Notion from the IT side, it allows you to do text highlighting. So for example, here, these items in red are actually commands that can be run in a Linux environment. So it differentiates the code from the explanation of the code or the command. Anyone would like to share what they use as their note-keeping tool, whether it be a notepad, writing in a journal, or any other app?
Dwayne, what you've been talking about so far is outside of my pay grade, right? You tell me about what's the advantage of these as against say just using a Word document for your notes.
Well,
you haven't explained, you haven't differentiated this and the advantages of using this.
Well, it's really just utilizing the technology. So for Google Keep, well, all of the three that are listed here are just a fraction of the tools available. These are ones that I use. All three of them, I can interact with the application, whether on the computer in a browser or on my mobile device. So I have access to my notes anywhere I go. I see Carson has his hand up.
If you had it in a Word document, wouldn't you have the same access to it?
Yes, in a sense, depending on how you made it accessible. So say you created the Word document on your computer, you would then need to copy it to your phone or copy it to a cloud storage solution like Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive to be able to access it on other devices and then make updates. So
I see.
one of the benefits I'd say is having one document in a central location that you can manipulate it from any device anywhere you are. So even if you're using a Word document, storage in a cloud storage solution that allows you to access it from any device.
Okay, I understand. I understand. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Person,
Um,
your hand up.
yeah, I was just looking through so for shoot planning, so by category, which is shoot planning, like me personally, what I do for shoot planning is I use one like Microsoft Excel because like that will help me be able to categorize things. So for example, if like I am going to rent equipment for this shoot, and I use Microsoft Excel to write like all the equipment I have to rent. And then if I have to send it to somebody else, like a producer or a rental house, then it's easier to send it to them. And you can always like, ones they can also share, they can see, they can make edits. So we can all make edits and we can all like view and see the changes and updates. And then also with note taking, something I also use Google Docs just because like Google Docs is just like for just writing down any random thoughts or any little details about the shoot. So that's one thing. So like Google Docs and Microsoft Excel. And then for shoot planning, I know it's not necessarily note taking, but I don't know if anybody has heard of an app called or a website called Millinote. It's very easy to use for like if you're in a creative field because one, it categorizes things like in folders, but it's done in a way that makes it very accessible. So you can simply copy an image and you can just copy an image, paste it, and you can start to organize how you'd like to visually see things. And then within that, you can make another folder. You can add like tiny little note tabs. If it's something specific you want to write down, you can add like the note tabs, and so it combines the visual and also the writing aspect at the same time. So for me, those are the top three, which is Google Docs, Excel, and Millinote. Yeah.
All right, thanks for that, Carson. Oh, also Bruce, Carson alluded to it just now.
Yes.
The tools that you employ, you also, depending on the project that you're working on, you want it to also accommodate collaboration. So say you have a personal project for simplest example. Um, you are collaborating with a makeup artist, a clothing designer, uh, and a hairstylist. You can use any one of these tools, outline the goals for the project, um, even assign tasks to the other members of the team who will be executing the project. And then you can share that document with them, and everybody can view and edit that file at the same time.
That makes sense. Yes, I can see the advantage now.
All right. Sean, you had your hand up earlier. Do you still want to say something?
Kristen, Spencer alluded to it. At my office, we use Google Docs to share spreadsheets and documents in one place. And then everybody can access it basically from their laptops and their smart devices, including phones. So our worksheets and schedules are generally shared on Google Docs.
Okay, that's good. Are there any thoughts from anyone else? Any questions? All right. The next area that I think is very critical is file management. So as a photographer, your key deliverable is the images that you capture. And during the entire production process, you need to be able to ensure that the images that you capture are preserved and delivered to the client. I've broken down the file management into the shooting process and the after shoot process. For the shooting process, some decisions would need to be made based on the type of camera that you have, whether it's a single card slot camera or a dual card slot. So, but most persons, if you have an entry level camera, you will have one slot that you insert a micro SD card. The semi-pro and professional cameras tend to have dual card slots that allow you, in most cases, to insert one SD card and one XQD card. With this single card, fortunately, I've never had instances of a card failing while on a shoot, but I've heard personal stories from persons that I know as well as persons online where you're at an event, you're on a shoot, and the card just goes. And that can be quite, I'd say, traumatic. To be on a shoot, the card dies maybe midway through the shoot, and you just lost several hundred images. One technique a friend of mine explained when he shot weddings is I believe he was shooting with Canon 6Ds at the time that only had a single card slot. What he would do, he'll have multiple cards, and after each major section of the wedding, he'll change those cards. Sorry about that. Yeah, so he'll change those cards after each major section. So when he's done with the getting ready, he changes the card, puts that up, putting a new one. When the ceremony is done, switches out the cards again. So he has at least 4 cards with images from that one wedding day. So in the event a card fails, he doesn't lose the entire images, the entire set of images from that wedding.
Well, Dwayne, that sounds sensible. I mean, if you only have one slot, I mean, that is having some insurance, eh? That makes sense. Never thought of that, but that makes sense.
Yeah. Especially for weddings, I believe you need to employ every tactic you can to ensure you deliver on a wedding. That's a critical event for a bride and groom, and you don't want at the end of the day that there's a bad taste left in their mouth and it's because of you. I'm sure you've seen some of the horror stories online with complaints from bride and groom against a photographer, or even lawsuits that came out of the couple not being pleased with the service that they were given. And a part of that service is ensuring that you deliver what you say you are going to deliver. When I switched from my Canon 60D to the Nikon D750, that was my first introduction to dual card slots. And since then, I made sure that subsequent cameras have dual slots. I shoot dual slots. Well, cameras with dual slots, they give you two functionalities. You either shoot in spillover, so you shoot on card A. When card A gets filled, it starts storing the images to card B, or you shoot in mirrored. So whatever is stored on card A is automatically copied to card B. So pretty much all my shoots, I shoot in mirrored, so I have that second card as backup to the first card. I've shared one method of ensuring that the images are preserved during a shoot. Does anyone have any other or any alternatives to that approach?
I think for me, when it comes to file management during a shoot, I don't usually shoot out of events. Also, the stuff I shoot is in studio. So what I would do is, one, I will use something called Capture One. So I will like tether to Capture One is a tether cable from my camera to my computer, and then also at the same time, the way it's set up is that Capture One will be storing, like, it'll be storing the images on Capture One itself, like on the application, but then the output folder on Capture One goes straight to the hard drive that's connected to it. So every time you take a shot, it stores it to the hard drive and it stores it to Capture One. And then you can even go further to make sure that it's also shooting to your card as well. So that's about like three backups basically always going at the same time. And obviously you can shoot to more, but that's like, I think for file management, that's the main way. And then also because during that, like, say at the end of the shoot, say it's like a very quick turnaround at the end of the shoot, the client can also go and look on Capture One, and then they can rate the images, and it makes it easier to determine, all right, this is the ones that we're going for, and this is the ones that we're not. But it also on Capture One, you can sort each images into folder as you're shooting. So say you're shooting like a fashion shoot and there's different looks, you can basically make a folder for look one, and it will make that folder as well on your hard drive. So you can shoot to look one, shoot to look two, so nothing gets jumbled over basically. You can so that's like, for file management, that's like the main thing that I usually use. And when I'm not shooting, I do the same thing with dual cards. So when it's done shooting, I want it shoots to the next one. But Yeah, that's what I did for mine.
Excuse me, Karsten, I'm
Hello.
very interested in what you're saying. So where do you control which folder the shot is going to? Is that done on the camera or
So
you
And
go to?
you did it on the computer. So on the computer, there's like a section where you can add a folder, and then if you shoot, it's like a big shoot, and so you have a Digitech, or even if it's just you, once you're done with one look, all you have to do is press plus, create a new folder, and then all the image, and then you name the folder, and all the images will go to that folder instead. So
let
it
me
helps keep
add
it.
some context, Karsten.
Oh
So
yeah,
with Capture One, it offers two methods of interaction. It offers a catalog approach, which you would be familiar with in Lightroom, where you create a catalog, you import images, you perform your edits, and those edits are stored within that catalog. Capture One offers that as well as a session workflow. So as Carson mentioned in his type of shoots where he's doing fashion and he has multiple looks, within the session interface, you can create a folder for each look. So say it's some high-end campaign and they have 5 um, outfits or 5 scenes that they're shooting. You can create a folder for each scene. When you're starting, set the current scene, the folder for the current scene as the active folder, and each photo that you take gets stored to that folder. When that look is finished, you set the next folder for the upcoming scene as active, and it stores the images there.
yeah, yeah. It's really good. And then even if like you have to do some slight edits on, say, you can edit for each image as you go as well. So I find it pretty useful to just shoot with Capture One as my main file management system.
Thank you.
A nice feature that I like with their method shooting is you can do a pre-edit. So you take the first image, you make some exposure adjustments, you make some white balance adjustments. Every image that you take subsequent to those changes, those edits get automatically applied to the new images that come into the folder. All right. But the next section, which falls under the pre-shoot, is offloading your images and maintaining a folder structure. So Carson had mentioned it with Capture One, where you create those folders within Capture One, but it also creates the folders on the hard drive as well. So you start with Capture One, you can start your folder organization from within the application. When I was using Lightroom before, I had a folder structure that I would use where I probably best if I draw it out here. So I create root folders that are by year. And then within the that year folder, I'd have a structure for the different types of shoots that I do. So I'd have one for personal. I can't read that. I have one for client work. And then the client here. So if you can understand it, 2024 is a root folder. Within 2024, I have these subfolders. So I have a personal folder for the projects that I'd be doing, any experiments that I'm doing. For clients, within the client folder, I'd have event. Yeah. Can't start all of them. I'll have another one for portraits. Another one for wedding. Oops. Then, so under each of these, and I'll have the respective clients. It might be a little overwhelming for persons that aren't used to creating folder structures, because of my little IT background. But my folder structure can be a little deep. So I have client one here. And then under client one, another approach from me, most persons would create one catalog whichever application they're using, whether it's Lightroom or Capture One. They'll have one catalog and store their entire work in that one catalog. For me, I create a catalog for each client or for each shoot. Then I'll have this, the selects. Have another folder for exports. So if you can see, this is what my folder structure looks like. So what I tend to do with each shoot, I dump all the images in rejects. I'll do a first round of culling. I'll mark items as 1 star, 2, identify those images, and then those images are moved from the rejects folder to the selects folder, and then the selects folder is imported into the catalog. Is there any part of this that you don't understand, anything that you would want to be clarified?
I think this is a interesting way to do it. I think like I like how it's organized. I think to like even to make it like even like simpler for people who might not shoot like as many clients or like shoot as often. I think a way that I do it sometimes is by I don't go by the year, but what I'll do is like for example, I organize my hard drive into two categories. So it's personal projects. Well, it's not actually, it's not, it used to be two, but now how I change it, the system I found that works best for me is I organize my hard drive so it has a finished folder, ongoing folder, and personal work. So within those folders, like let's say finish folder. So you open my hard drive and you go to finish. In finish folder, you'll have all the shoots I've done that are done, like no more additional work. So let's say I shot something last month and it's done. No, there's no more, nothing to be added, nothing to be changed. So in that finish folder, it'll say the name of the client. So I have the client name, and then you have like the name of the shoot. So let's say it was like a wedding, or I actually don't shoot weddings out, but it's like it was a, let's call it dress shoot, black dress shoot. So I put the name of the client and I put what the shoot was for. It's like clients will also name their shoot, so you could just take the name that they gave you and just add it on instead. So I'll put their name, the name of the production, and then within that folder, it will have it'll have finished, like final images and raw images. And then within final images, there's a 4x5, and then there's a 9x16. And then in the raw, that's just all the raw images. And you can even take out the part where it could really just be, that's if you don't do two formats. I just do that to keep them organized, but it really could just be you finish folder, and then in the finish folder you have the client, and then after the client you have the deliverables. So you have the images, the final images, and you have the raw images if you keep those. And then in the ongoing folder, what I will do is I'll keep in the ongoing folder, I will just have like things that are still happening. So it's like I did a shoot last week and we haven't done any final selects yet. We haven't done any final images yet. In that folder, I'll keep the client name. In that folder, if you open, it'll be ongoing, client name, and then when you open the client folder, it'll just have like it'll have raw images, and then it'll have like selects, but it doesn't have like any final images yet. So the selects is how like can keep track of it. So I say we have like 10 selects, but we have to cut it down to like 5. Then I'll keep track of that. So those selects, whenever they're like, okay, I'm ready to choose now, you can just send those to them by Dropbox, Google Drive, wherever, and they can view it. And then when they're finished and they make the final selects, then you can make a new folder that says finals, get those edited, get the edited folder back, and then if there's nothing else to do after that, you can just do a transfer over. So you transfer the raw images from the ongoing to the final folder, and then the final deliverables, you transfer that over, and you can just delete everything else that you're not using or that's already in like a finals folder. So that's just if like you don't shoot a lot and you don't like, some people probably don't have like the capacity to like do a lot of organization, especially if you don't shoot a lot or if you don't shoot many in-depth things. I think that's also like a easier way for people who just don't shoot as much. Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Three, organization, folder structures.
Well, Dwayne, I shoot, well, events and I shoot landscapes and so on. For instance, I have, say, Port Royal, a lot of Port Royal. I will put probably the year and month Port Royal shoot,
Mhm.
you know, and break it down that way. I probably have about 6 or 8 different Port Royals shoots, you know, and I break it down that way. Of course, like my waterfalls, you know, I have a category for waterfalls, and then I break it down by the name of the waterfall, you
Oh,
know. Well, you know, but I understand I can always find my work. That's the key thing.
that's the key thing. You know where the work is, so you can find it.
Yes, 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 yes.
So there are going to be different approaches. Um, there are some persons who find calm in chaos. So that's their approach. They don't really have a folder structure. They just dump everything in a folder. But ask them where something is, they'll find it. It was like my vice principal when I was in high school. You go in her office, her desk is filled with things. Ask her where something is, she knows exactly where it is in the mess. Um, just a
I
point.
think
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I think it's also good to mention that you don't have to always store on your hard drive. Like some people well, I know some people that I've met, they have like what's it called? I think it's like a spinning disk, something like that. I forgot what it's called. But
Mm.
they kind of clear their hard drives onto like a bigger storage unit, but also it's good to keep in mind that you can also store things online. If you use like Dropbox, Dropbox is very, very good for storing things. So I'd recommend that as well. Just anybody who has Dropbox or thinking about getting it, Dropbox would be really good for just like storing stuff. I like on Dropbox, if like you're sharing with a client on Dropbox in file management, then like in that file management, you can make like a workflow and you can have like raw image. You can organize by looks. You can organize by the selects and the edits and the different versions. I just think Dropbox is just really really useful overall. If you are interested in like getting on Dropbox and trying out their file management system.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm
well,
not mentioning cloud storage in the when we speak about backups.
Okay.
You already
does one have to pay for Dropbox now?
um depending on the amount of storage you need. So most
Yeah, I
cloud
think they have
storage
a free way
providers
too.
provide a free tier. I think it's anywhere between 2 and 5 gigs. Um, I believe Mega has cut down now. They initially offered 50 gigs for their free account, so I think they've cut it down now to 20 gigs.
Okay.
If you don't like, I think if somebody doesn't want to pay for storage though, I think the other option is just like you could always use that just as like a viewing way for your clients because they can also see it and select their selects from there as well. Instead of like saying, "Hey, send me your screenshots of what you like," or anything that you can just send it to them and they can also move the photos. You could just send the proof images, and you could just make those like kilobytes, and those will be like really really small, and it won't take up any storage at all. I think that's a way it could be utilized.
Question, how reliable is WeTransfer?
I personally think it's
Reliable in
good.
terms of what?
Well, I use a free, but
Mhm.
in terms of, you know, paying for it, I don't know at that level how.
Oh, yeah, no,
It's pretty good.
I've never used it for paying. Carson, you've used it?
Yeah, I use WeTransfer every now and then. It's good if you're like just sending files, but sending and receiving files, it's good for that. Because if the person who's sending you files, if you don't do your own editing and a retoucher is sending you files, then they can send you as many as you'd have to pay for it. But if you're sending, it has to be a 2 GB license. But it's pretty good, I would say. If you do want to pay for it, then it's fast. It's really good. It's a good service, in my opinion.
Okay.
Didn't know it still existed.
Yeah.
I use it every day.
So from what I'm seeing here from the pricing plan, it's really the pay, the amount that you pay is really lifting limits that are applied to the free version. So for the free version, you can send up to 2 gigs of files. And you can send up to 20, you can have up to 20 downloads per transfer. So in paying the subscriptions, those limits are lifted, and you get some additional features similar to other cloud storage, where you actually store files on WeTransfer's platform. So instead of just uploading, the person downloads and then the images or whatever content you send is deleted, you can upload to a folder, have it stored there, and then share afterwards. So it's just dependent on the need that you have.
Yeah, and you can if you don't want to. I feel like what I've done when I didn't want to pay for it was I just send the files 2 times. That's what I did. So like I just send if it was over 2 GB, I just send one and then I send another one after, and they don't really stop you from doing that. That's what I do sometimes.
For their pro plan, you get 1 terabyte of storage, and for their premium plan, you get unlimited storage. So for my export folder, it's actually broken down into some other subfolders, but I'll speak to that when we get to the export section. All right, so now that you have the images uploaded to your PC in whatever folder structure you've employed, the next step is how you retain those images and the backup strategy that you apply to ensure you don't lose any of those files. So the workflow that I have starts from shooting mirrored on the dual cards. When I get to the machine and do that offloading, the second card in the camera doesn't get touched until the images are delivered. So that second card is set aside in the card holder. The images that are on the computer gets copied to 2 external hard drives. And while during the editing process, say I'm editing each night, at the end of each night, I copy the changes over to the external hard drives. So at any one point, I have 4 copies of the images for that shoot. To help me with that, there's a free and open source tool called Free File Sync that I use to do the sync syncing of files. I can probably show you what that looks like. All right, you're seeing my screen now?
Yes, it's in the screen.
All right, so this application on the right is free file sync. And it's pointed to these two folders. So this 2024 folder is on the hard drive in my PC. And this 2024 folder here is the folders on one of my external hard drives. So this option here, I'll try to check. So how I've set up the application is it checks this folder. So I try to point it wrong. No, change that. So the application will check the contents of the 2024 folder and then compare it. So it compares the contents of the 2024 folder on the hard drive and compares it with the 2024 folder on the external hard drive. And wherever it finds differences, it copies or deletes files. So because of my workflow, I'm making backups as I go. There are certain files that are deleted and created from the point of view of the applications themselves, a Lightroom or a Capture One. They'll create catalog specific files at the time that you are working and delete some. Also, images that I'm editing, I may be deleting images from the folders and making edit changes, which also reflects in the catalog file. So when it does a compare, right now it did a comparison between the two folders, and it's showing folders that it would have deleted. In this case, it's showing a folder because this folder has an Airbnb Pro production. It's saying it didn't see it in this folder, so it's marked for deletion. But that's not what I wanted to know. But pretty much that's what it would do in the setting that I have here, which is mirrored. So it's going to ensure that one folder has the same contents of the other. All right, so no, oh, sorry. And so as I mentioned, for me, I would have four copies of the images from any particular shoot. When I export and deliver images, I also do cleanup. So the folder that I identified earlier as rejects, that folder gets deleted when I deliver the images to the final images to the client. You could take the backup strategy a little further. So currently I don't use cloud storage as part of my backup strategy. But what you could do is instead of having two external hard drives, then you could have one external hard drive. So you have three local backups, and then you have a fourth backup in the cloud. That is a bit more resilient. So just in case, God forbid, you had a fire at home, your computer, the external hard drive gets damaged, you can go to the cloud to get that additional copy and continue working. If anybody else has a similar process or has not their own backup strategy, you're welcome to chime in.
Not everyone. So I think I have a multi-tiered backup strategy in a sense. I don't want to go too deeply into, well, I don't want to half go into my workflow, but so any images that I am actively editing is in a folder that's called live work, so to speak. And ever so often I will use a tool that's called sync back. So synchronize this live work folder to my external drives. Separate and apart from that, at the end of the year, I will usually archive live work into my greater catalog. And usually what I will end up then doing is synchronizing. So I have 3 5-terabyte external drives here with me in Cayman. In Jamaica, I have 2 8-terabytes and a 4-terabyte. And I think I have a 2-terabyte SSD portable, which my existing catalog for landscape is so whenever I'm doing the consolidation at the end of the year, I'll consolidate onto the SSD, and then I will synchronize that data over to the 3 5-terabyte externals, and then when I come back to Jamaica, I then do the same. So I have on-site backups here in Cayman, and I have off-site full backups back in Jamaica. I don't have anything in the cloud as yet. But yeah, that's roughly my strategy for my backups.
Are you doing the offsite to Jamaica or VPN tunnel? Or when you come home, you do that?
Yeah, man. So when I come home, and I mean, I haven't, to be fair or to be honest, I haven't been shooting that much or that actively. So usually when I come back to Jamaica, I'll probably go out and I'll shoot and I'll get some imagery. And if I'm so inspired while I'm here, then if I'm so inspired and I'm here, then I'll head out, get some images, drop it on my external. Sorry, drop it on the laptop. Do whatever calling I need to do, synchronize it, consolidate, and then when I travel back to Jamaica, those images are then added to, they are then synchronized to the greater catalogs across all of the drives. My catalog is small enough that I can have it sitting on 4 to 5 terabytes generally. So I effectively have let's say about 6 backups of my data. I've had drives that have failed, which that's fine because I have all of the redundancy. Couple years back, I think before I left Jamaica, also there was somebody broke in through the window and stole my 8 terabyte externals and my laptops. But fortunately, because of all of the redundancy, I have that protection. I should also mention that with the exception of my SSD, all these drives are also encrypted using the native hardware encryption on the drives. I use WD-My passport drives, which come built in with encryptions. I think the WD-My books as well come with encryption. And that's one requirement for me actually buying my drives as well. But yeah, that is.
Who may not understand the term encryption, pretty much the software that he's speaking of on the drives, they render the files unreadable unless you possess the key to unlock them. In the case where he had one of those drives stolen, the person who stole it wouldn't be able to retrieve the contents of the drive. It's pretty much useless to them.
Yeah. And then I believe with the WD drives, if you don't have a password and you try to enter the password multiple times, what will happen is that I believe it will eventually wipe the drives. So,
Feel safe. Okay.
yeah. So you do have some semblance of protection unless you have some, I guess, some way around it.
This is really interesting. That made me realize that I do not back up as nearly as well as I thought I was. But this is, I think, I think for me, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was saying for me, all I really do is like I have one T7 hard drive, and then I'll just back up to that. Whatever I shot, I'll back it up there, and then after that, like whatever else I need, like I use Google Drive a lot for backups, not for the raw files, but for like the final product, Google Drive and Dropbox. But now I realize like I really do need to step it up because I think with the T7s you have like a password thing going on. So that's one good thing. But for the rest of them, yeah, I wasn't even doing the passwords or encryptions, and now I'm realizing, oh, they'll actually delete it for you. That's really interesting. I didn't know about any of that stuff.
Well, I can't speak to the T7, so you'll have to.
But the T7 is very simple. It's just like a good beginner hard drive. Just keeps everything like in place, and you can.
SSD?
Yeah, you can carry it around. You just connect it. It has a password thing going on for it, so you have to unlock it with the password, and then you can access the files. But it's decent. That's what I use for tethering and storing stuff. But one thing I think I think as photographers to note is that maybe it's also time to start like pushing your files like digitally, like for a storing method as well, just because of the way things are moving. I think it's also good to have everything stored on the cloud as well. So even if like there's a situation where something was stolen, but you know, thank God you had the protection, but like we didn't have it, at least everything would still be like on the cloud, you know? So I think that's also something people who are willing to pay for storage should try out. But yeah, that's it.
All right. So, best practice when it comes to backup is to ensure you have at any one point 3 copies of your files. Sean and myself, we are in IT, so there are times when we are going to surpass the best practice. So you heard me saying that I have 4 copies. Sean said he has 6. So that's something to bear in mind. But ensure that you have at least 3 copies. I've had a friend of mine come to me to help him recover files on 3 separate occasions, and each time I share my recommendations, and he comes back later to say, oh, a card failed, or he deleted files from a card after thinking he copied it to the computer, or he copied it to the computer, didn't verify formatting the card. When he went back to the computer, the files are corrupted on the computer. And I've always made a recommendation, have multiple cards and try and have at least 3 copies of your file. It was the third or fourth time that he came to me distraught because the images were for a wedding. That he said, all right, I'm going to put in the effort to get some additional cards and external hard drive to ensure I have multiple copies.
One quick addition, in the wedding context. So I no longer shoot clients' work. But back in the day when I shot weddings, my camera unfortunately only had 1 card slot, right? But practice that I had, so like every Black Friday, sales would come up and you can buy all of these SD cards, and I had like 12 to 16 SD cards, right? So whenever I go to a wedding, I would shoot the getting ready, change out the cards so that, in the event that, well, let me not go into the reason as it. So I'd shoot the getting ready and the first look if needed on 1 set of cards, put that into my case, put in brand new cards, shoot the ceremony. At the end of the ceremony, change out the cards. And then for formals, same thing. And then for the reception, similar process. The thought process is that in the event that your cards are corrupted, you have some insurance, because if let us say, God forbid, you're shooting the wedding on 128 gig card for the whole day. You're going through everything, dolly farmers, and then doing reception. For whatever reason, your card is corrupted. If you never had a second shooter or a second camera that you're also capturing images on, you're up the creek without a paddle. So things like that, I think those are some strategies that you can use in the event that you don't have a second card. And then the other practice that I would have right after a wedding is that as soon as I get home, before I even sleep, I am dumping all of the images onto my laptop, and then I'm doing a preliminary backup. So I had two externals that never had my catalogs on them, and what I would end up doing is I would just dump or do a copy of the files that were captured to these 2 externals. So right there, I now have 4 copies of the files. I have the files on the cards, I have the files locally, and then I'll also have the files on 2 external drives. So God forbid something happen, there is sufficient redundancy. Unfortunately, I haven't had such. I didn't have such a situation in my short client career. But yeah, that's it for me.
I'd like to step back to the offloading process a bit. So I actually modified my workflow somewhat. So when I was using Lightroom, there's two things. The approach of having a catalog for each shoot came out of the need to not lose catalog data. So to explain further, when I was using Lightroom at the time, there were some instability issues, and the catalog could get corrupted. If you had one catalog with your work from 2008 until today, and that catalog gets corrupted, you lose all the catalog data that you have for those images. Remember, the catalog is storing all the edit changes that you've made to the file. For those who may not know, raw processors don't apply the edits that you've done to an image to the actual raw file. The edits are stored in what they call a sidecar file. And then on export, the settings are applied to the raw image in a merged format, for want of a better word, to give you the output that you see when you edit. But if you are to pull out the raw file and open it somewhere else, you're only going to see the raw file. So it was out of that caution that I went the route of having each shoot have its own catalog. So if a catalog for me fails, it will only affect that one shoot. The other workflow change for me, culling or going through and picking out the good and bad images within Lightroom was very slow. So what I employed then was to use Photo Mechanic to do the cull and then put the selects or import the selects to Lightroom. How Photo Mechanic worked, it pulled the JPEG preview from the raw file and allow you to go through the images at a much faster pace. When I switched to Capture One didn't have that slow or delay when you're culling. So I actually removed the Photo Mechanic process of culling out of my workflow. So that's one step less that I have to do when I'm doing my culling.
Yeah, just to chime in, I also use Photo Mechanic for my culling. I'll probably do about 2 or 3 passes on the images before I actually, yeah, I'll actually do 2 or 3 passes in culling. And then I'll also use Photo Mechanic to rename the images where I think I'll put like date, the location or the purpose of the shoot, followed by the sequence numbers. The times that I've briefly shot video, I've also included like the camera name into the files as well. But yeah, I mean, similar to you, Lightroom is not the ideal tool for culling for me. I'm able to fly through the images in Photo Mechanic. And don't get me wrong, I mean, once images are in Lightroom and I've started doing the edits, I mean, when I'm going through the images, I'll start seeing things that I may not necessarily like about those images, and you know, there'll be like a 4th and 5th culling. But usually with Photo Mechanic, I'll cut down the set of images from 1,000, 2,000 down to 200, 300, 400 tops, depending on, but can't really speak to weddings. I mean, my thing is more landscapes and architecture now. So, you know, I'll go through and I'll use Photo Mechanic. The other thing I'll do as well is I'll look on the, particularly when I'm bracketing, I will look on the histogram data to guide my decisions in which brackets I cull, just to minimize the number of files that I'm storing. I mean, that has worked out well for me thus far.
That sounds good. All right, so the next thing up is exporting. My exporting workflow has changed as well since I've switched to Capture One. So in Lightroom, I'm not sure if they've implemented it since, but if you need to export different versions, well, versions in terms of the size, the pixel size of the images, you would have, say you want one set of the images to be 2000 pixels on the long side. You need a second set that is 4000 pixels on the long side. You would have to export the 2000 pixel set first, then go back in and export the 4000 pixel set. Capture One allows you to export all the sets you need at once. So what I tend to do, I'll export a set for social media. I usually do 1350 pixels on the long side or 2000 pixels on the long side for social media ready images. I'll do a client delivery set, which is 3500 pixels on the long side. And then I'll do what I call an archive set, where I export the full res image. So for my Nikon Z6 II, that's 6016 pixels on the long side. So when I initiate an export for a shoot, those three sets of images organized in their own folder are exported in one go. The high-res export that I started doing, I find it to be very beneficial. Just a few days ago, I was putting some images together for an organization that reached out to me, and I realized I didn't have the high-res export for two of the images. So I ended up having to dig up an old machine that I still had Lightroom on, connect the drive, and export those images. While the other more recent images that I was using, that I've been using Capture One for, and I've done those high-res exports, I just went to the folder, picked them out right away. So I'd suggest, if you don't already do so, incorporate a full res export of your images, just in case you don't have access to the catalog. The catalog got corrupted or the like. Anybody have any export preferences that they like?
For me personally, what I do is in Capture One, when you go to like export settings, when you're ready to export, what I'll do is just like, because I use an editor, I will send them the TIFF files. So I just export for TIFF. And then if I'm doing like a client review, I'll just put JPEG quick proof as well. So that's just like the main two things that I will do when it's time for exporting. After like tethering, I just go straight to TIFF. So I usually do a quick proof first so that they can view it and then send it by Dropbox. And then afterwards, when they finally select, I'll go back in and I'll go back on the same images and then I'll just like hit export again and go to TIFF files. So that way the editor has like the highest quality or the most data when it comes to editing the images. And I think even if you're an editor yourself, it's also you can do the same thing. But yeah, that's what I will do when it comes to exporting. And then when they're sending back, I just tell them like, for example, like if the images are for a website, they just tell the client, you tell the editor exactly how to send it back on their end as well. So that's something I do.
Okay. Question for you, Carson. The images that you receive from the editor,
Yes.
are they sending back the layered TIFF files or the flattened TIFF files?
The editor will send me back they'll actually send me back a JPEG or a TIFF file it depends on how the format that the client would need and then the format that I want it in. So if it's for a personal shoot, then I say send back send back the JPEG and they're fine with just sending back the JPEG. But if it's like if it's for example they were shooting like a magazine cover and then for the magazine cover, the people who are gonna be doing the graphic design need to like write over it and stuff. Then they would send back the flat. I think it'd be the unflattened TIFF file. But in my experience, I always just get back the JPEG, and it's always worked fine for me. It comes back usually like so like if it's a website, it's probably like I don't know like 300 kilobytes, depending on the size of whatever website engine that they use that takes their images. So like my website, the maximum is 25 megabytes. So I would say I'll always ask for something that's a little less than 25 megabytes. So I don't have to resize it myself. I can just take the 25 megabytes, let's say less than 25, so like a 24 megabyte image, and I can use it for social and I can also use it for the website. So I always just ask back for the JPEG, and yeah, I've always been comfortable with just asking for that back.
Okay. So I assume then that you are mostly comfortable with their edits. You've never gotten back images and say, all right, I need to tweak this or tweak that. What you get from them is acceptable.
Yeah, what I usually return is acceptable, and if there's something that I have to tweak, then I'll just ask them to, you know, do it for me, and then they'll resend it back.
Okay. All right. Understood. Any other input? All right. As it relates to client review, so for me, when I started doing paid work, especially for portraits, I found that what I thought was a good image or what I thought looked good didn't necessarily look good to the client. Because each person has a view of themselves. Some persons say their right side looks better than their left. An eye looks better than the other. An ear is shaped better than the other. So early in my process, I decided to let the client choose the images to be edited. I've seen persons do it or continue to do it because they see that as an upsell. So if they get 80 images from a portrait session. They edit all 80, present to the client. Maybe they are delivering 20. They edit all of them, hoping that when the client sees it, they'll purchase additional images. For me, time is money. My editing process is a little more involved than other persons, but I do retouching of my own images. The type of retouching I do can take anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour on a single image, depending on the type of image. So I have to manage that time. So what I would do for my portrait sessions, my basic portrait session, I deliver 15 images. I may come out of a session with 40, 45 images. That's where my first export would come in, where I export a set for proofs, which I export at 1024 pixels on the long side. So it's a low-res file. I use Pixieset, so I'll upload the images, the unedited images from the session, and then ask them to go through and favorite the ones that they want. If they want more than the 15 that is to be delivered, they'll indicate by favoriting those images as well, and then I'll bill them for the additional edits. But I found that process to be less of a hassle for me because I'm editing the images that I will be delivering. I mentioned I use Pixieset to do that image review. There are others out there, SmugMug. Where's the other one? There are a few, but if I can find one, I actually started doing this selection process using contact sheets. So I'd actually create a PDF document. Lightroom at the time allowed you to create contact sheets. So it will create a PDF with all the images. I think like six or 8 images to a page. And I'd send that PDF over. The person ticks off the ones that they want and send over the PDF, and then I'll edit from that. So I'm
Repeat what program? Sorry, can you repeat what program did that for you other than Lightroom? You said another one.
Well, Lightroom created the contact sheet, but
Yeah.
for general image review, I use Pixieset. There's another one called SmugMug. I was trying to remember another one, but there are quite a few of them.
Yeah,
Zenfolio.
there's also PickTime.
Yeah, PickTime, that's the one I was trying to remember.
PickTime is pretty useful because they can like heart the message, they can heart the images, and they also organize the images into scene with AI, so it does it by itself. That's a good reason why it's useful. I think for me, like I always stick with Dropbox because Dropbox, the clients I've worked with, they've been okay with Dropbox for their image selection, so they can literally just like go in Dropbox. They can, and then they make their folder. So like I'll make a folder for them, so like selects, and then as they go through, they can like just move it, just press move, and into that select. It's a little longer than how you normally do it on like Pixieset or PickTime, but it's just been my preferred way because it also keeps everything like in one place. So it'll keep all the files and the storage in one place, and then all the selection in one place. So it's just like it's more convenient for me. But PickTime is definitely also a really good option if like if you just want like your client to heart the message so you can get it edited. But yeah.
What sites like Pixieset does is when the person chooses their favorites, you don't have to look at the file, record the file name, go back to your raw processor to identify the files and mark them. They provide a list. So PixieSet provides a comma separated list that Lightroom uses, or a space separated list that Capture One uses. So you copy that list in text format and then go to the library section of Lightroom or Capture One and do a search, and then filters the images by the file name. And then from there, you can maybe add a star or add a color that will separate those selects from the remaining images. All right. So our next section will come down to invoicing. So for those who offer photography as a service, you need a way to record the jobs that you do, provide quotes and invoices to your clients to get your payment. Microsoft Word, Excel, and the like, they provide templates for invoices. This requires you opening a file manually, changing the invoice number if it doesn't have a formula that auto increments. Entering the details for the invoice and then printing that out to PDF and sending it off. If it's a quote that you sent off that's accepted, then you would now need to create an invoice and copy the details from the quote to the invoice template to then print again. The alternate is to use invoicing applications that will allow you to add the products or services that you're selling, add your clients, and then in generating a quote or an invoice, you choose a client from a pick list or add a new client. Then you add the individual line items to the quote or invoice. And that can then be sent off from within the system via email to the client. If it's a quote that you sent off, the quote is accepted, within the system you can convert the quote to an invoice, which saves you that manual step of reproducing what's on the quote on the invoice. I've used Wave invoicing for a few years. They've made some changes in recent time where they've narrowed their support to US and Canadian accounts. So over time, my account has seen features reduced. So I'm now, I've switched over to Soho invoicing, and that's where I'm now generating my quotes and invoices. What I like about Soho, it allows you to attach files that Wave didn't offer. So if you want to send a quote and send a contract over with it, you can add the contract as a PDF file along with the quote, and those two get sent together. Anybody using any other invoicing solution?
I use bill.com. I would heavily recommend it. It's really good, and they just added a new feature called invoice financing. So if you're like me and you don't get paid until like a net 30 payment, so you don't get paid until like 30 days after the shoot, it's good because invoice financing allows you to be paid without having to have to wait. So that's a good thing I'd recommend is bill.com, because you can, one, it sends the it sends the PDF for you. The invoice sends a PDF, all the bills that you have, and it can also pre-save bills. Like, let's say you have a recurring client and you're doing the same thing over and over for them, then it saves items for you. So instead of you having to manually enter it every time, you just press create invoice and then you just add item, and it adds the item from the last one. I say you're giving the same service to different clients at the same price, same everything, then you can just add item without having to manually enter it each time. But the most important feature is invoice financing. That's the most unique thing I see they have, because a lot of people, especially like I know people like New York, a lot of them don't get paid. Like they just made it a law that oh, good night, Miss Amanda. But they just made it a law that you have that, because there's that issue. They just made a law that all freelancers have to be paid within 30 days now, because before people could do net 90, they could do net 60, net 45. So you do work today and you wouldn't get paid until 3 months later for that same work. So with the whole invoice financing thing, it's really helpful, because if you're waiting on a big payment, you don't have to wait the 30 days. You could just finance it, and it does take a percentage. Of course, they have to make money off it some way, but that's if you do really think if you run a business and you're trying to make sure everything stays afloat with your monthly payments, etc. I think it is 1% of whatever you're being paid. That's how I remember it. And then I think they don't take the 1% if you pay back if you pay them back, they give you a period, and then you can pay it back. So that's a really good feature. Just invoice financing with Bill.com. I'll write it down. But yeah.
That sounds good.
And then it also had credit card features. So like if somebody's paying you, you can get an instant payment from them with their credit card instead of having to wait like days for it to process. That's the one for sure. They take out 1% of all your credit card payments. So if a client pays you their credit card, you can turn on the option when you send in the invoice that it will do credit card, and that way when you do the credit card, it will just instantly pay you. So instead of having to wait for the bank to process it or wait 2 to 5 days or 3 to 5 days, it just comes instantly. So yeah.
Yeah, I find most solutions that offer invoicing, they allow you to accept payments using their payment gateways. So they process the payment for you, charge you for the processing, and then deposit the amounts to your account.
And also like QuickBooks is a really good one too. It's not, I don't think a lot of people do use it for invoicing, but QuickBooks is good because QuickBooks is like a whole ecosystem. So you have QuickBooks you can do it for your taxes, you can do it for your finance, you can do it for almost everything. So people with QuickBook is useful as well, and it also offers invoice financing. It also offers you, QuickBook is like a whole system by itself. So they also offer you like a line of credit if they think your business is qualified for it. So they can offer you like a line of credit. They can offer you all these different things just by signing up with them. And I think that's helpful, especially if like you're a new photographer and you need gear or you need hard drives and SD cards, and like you have clients or you have stuff that are coming in, and I think that's a useful thing to have, especially if you're not ready to like go to a bank and get a loan from the bank or anything. But yeah.
And just to point out some of the features that Karsten mentioned, would not be available to us here in Jamaica. Some of those services are going to be dependent on you having a business within the US, for example, having a US bank account or having a bank account in a US bank.
Yeah, that's just mainly for like, I think that's just mainly for the line of credit option. But I know with Bill.com and QuickBooks, well, mainly Bill.com, invoice financing is like international, so it's based everywhere. But I know like the only thing they have is that like obviously taxes, different countries, different taxes,
Yeah.
and line of credit. That's the only thing I know might not be in Jamaica right now, but I know invoice financing is there.
That sounds good. And then the final item is contracts. You want to ensure that you have the means of protecting yourself. Well, protecting yourself and for both parties to be held accountable, and that's done with your contract. I initially started using contracts by printing out a PDF, sending it to the client, them signing it, scanning it, and sending it back to me. I print it, sign it, scan it, and send them their copy. So that's the manual version of that. You can digitize that process by using solutions that offer or facilitate contract workflows. So you can create a template using a PDF, upload that PDF to the solution, identify where each party is supposed to sign or initial and sign, put in where date is supposed to be recorded, and send that out as a workflow. So you would specify that the client must sign first. When they sign, it comes back to you for you to sign. So the system sends them an email. They open the link to the contract, they review and sign using their mouse or tablet. And when they sign, a signature, a digital signature is applied to the file to verify that the person did indeed sign the document. Once they've completed that, the system then sends you the signed version of the copy for you to apply your signature. And the same thing applies. Once you sign, the system attaches a digital signature that identifies you as or verifies you as signing the document. And then the system sends that final signed copy to both parties. Well, in this case, both, but you can have multiple parties depending on the service that you're offering. So if 5 persons need to sign the contract, including yourself, you identify the 5 persons and in what order they need to sign. And that's your signing workflow. I currently use ZodoSign, but there are a lot of options out there. Anybody want to chime in? What are you using for contracts? How are you issuing your contracts? Are you issuing contracts?
For contracts, I definitely think that is an important point. Everybody needs to start like having contracts because there are clients or people out there, and I have a client, but there are people out there who will really try to like, you know, mess with you if you like they'll say they'll do something, you'll promise a line of work and they'll promise a payment, or it's not a payment sometimes, it just can be anything. Like anything can be misled on their end or misled on your end. So it's always good to have a contract that clearly outlines everything, like clearly says this is what we agreed to. Because then if you have to take to a lawyer or somebody, then you have that to show basically. So even like with me, luckily the other day I got an agency, but before, so they make contracts. So what actually I make a pre-contract first. That's what I started doing. So I can probably make a show it. But what you do is I have a format, and then what I use from there, I will show it. So it's a pre-contract. It's like we outline all the deliverables. We outline how the shoot is gonna happen, And then from there, once we have that outlined, I'll send over an official contract. I'm gonna try and pull it up really quickly, so that way everybody could kind of have an example.
Okay.
Let me see. But I think this is really good because it outlines everything kind of right off the bat. So that way, like, you can, even before you waste your time and you send an official contract, you have, you have an example of what it's going to look like from the start. I'm just looking for it, and I use Google Sheets to do it.
Okay.
I am looking. It is somewhere in here. But yeah, somebody can continue while I search for it. I'm just looking for it in my Google Sheet.
All right, no problem. So can I see a show of hands, persons who are using contracts? All right, great, Bruce.
Dwayne, I find that a lot of photographers, because we're in a small society, everybody knows somebody or is related to somebody. A lot of photographers tend to say, boy, the man is a honest groundsman, man. I know the man from a long time. He won't shaft. So you go by word of mouth, and it hasn't caught me yet, thank God. But I know it happens a lot, and some of us embarrassed to really get formal with the client and have a contract.
Mhm.
They don't raise it, and we don't want to raise it. And most times, you fall out with somebody because of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'd admit I don't have contracts for all the type of work I do, but the critical ones I do, especially weddings. The contract for me sets the expectation for the client. At the end of the day, you can say, I didn't deliver what was stated in the contract. I had a case a few, well, not me. I was a second shooter for a photographer, and when we got to probably halfway through the ceremony, the groom stopped me and asked me, so where is the videographer? I said, huh? I'm not sure what you're talking about. So at the end of it, what had happened was the groom knew a relative of the photographer that I was shooting for. He told that person that he wanted somebody to do photography and videography. He said he can recommend somebody. When the recommendation was made, he didn't provide a contract that outlined what he was delivering. The groom, because he told the person what he wanted, is expecting photos and video. So if the contract was delivered, it would have stated that I'm delivering photography services and photography services only. He could then, at that time, make the decision, do I go with this alone or do I find somebody else? But because the contract wasn't shared, the expectation wasn't set, and it caused a problem in the end. All right, Carson, I see your screen is up. I can
Yeah.
go through the
So
explanation.
this is what I call my pre-contract or my scope of work. This is for a job that I did not end up getting, but I think it's still useful in a way. So, what you do is you like obviously you have like your description part, when it's gonna happen, which number job this is, and then the contact sheet. So I'm the photographer, my contact information, um, the agency or whoever contacted me, their information up next. And then you just have that. So it's like a rough sheet. Then you move to the second part, that's the shoot description. So in this part, you put like 1 day of capturing a wedding at at Port Royal. It's a 1 day capturing a wedding at Port Royal, and then casting, talent, specs. So that part I usually leave it out if I don't have anything to do with it. Styling, creative, so I usually leave that out. Then you put the number of days shooting in there. So you say 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. Say it's a big client and they say, okay, come for the weekend. We're gonna be on location for 2 days. You put 2 days of shooting, and then the shoot day specs, like say it's gonna be a 10-hour day basically for production and crew. And then deliverables, you put in what's gonna be delivered, what did we agree on. So sometimes I'll put 30 final images, leave it there. 30 images. That's all they're gonna get from me. And then post-production specs, that's like mid-shoot, we can kind of write like, oh, we're gonna put like, we need to add this in post-production, or for post-production, we can know, like, for example, we can know, like, how do I say it? We can know the format we're delivering in, so 4:5 or 9:16, or how are we gonna deliver it, if it's a video, like if it's a social video, are we gonna put like 9:16, or are we gonna deliver it 16:9, just like different specs like that. And then you go to the proposed calendar. So then like you put the week that you start, you put research, your bidding. So that way you can kind of map out what am I doing for this client. So you can kind of track your workflow basically. And then like, so this has the research. That's just like if they're asking you to shoot a wedding a certain way, you never shot a wedding on an island before, or not an island. So you never shot a beach wedding before. No, you can use that time to research. How do you shoot a beach wedding? Is there anything you need to know? And then the next week, you have like all the details locked in, and then the upcoming week is the shoot. So, and then you move to the money part where you have to talk about money. So like for this is just like, I think all of this was done by somebody else for me. I didn't get this job, unfortunately, because it was just one of those clients who like, I have a great idea, and then they never follow back up. And this was kind of like what we were proposing at the time based off what they wanted. They wanted to do like a really big worldwide campaign, and shoot, it was like for a really big wine company. And they wanted to like a really big global campaign, have billboards and all that stuff. And we wanted to start off small as we could in terms of like to cover everybody. So for like a day rate, this is what I had put for 1 day of shoot. I put $1,500, and then a buyout, which was how much images they could own and use for like a year. Well, actually, the buyout was just so they could own the images in perpetuity. It was like $1,000, and then the location and model scouting, that was just like charging to find a location, find models, find all these different things, and then production coordination. That was to hire somebody who would be on set that day to coordinate everything, because it was supposed to be a really big campaign that never ended up happening. And then because we're using sheets, there's actually like a sum function here, so you don't actually have to manually enter anything. You can just like you can just add. So you can just add, it will add it for you. So any number you put in any of those fields, oops, it's not happening this one. Any number you put in those fields, it should see it changes it for you. So if they're like, oh, we need to change something, then it changes it, and then you put not included. So if you're not paying for your own travel or work, your insurance, or I don't know what transfer of copyright was about. I don't. I really didn't pay attention much to this job, but anything that is not included in terms of what they're paying for, you gotta put the here, and then that's like covered in a final invoice, and then it uses a usage and reproduction, right? So it has like number of images included, the duration, how long are they going to use these images? It's going to be a year, a month, 2 years, forever. And then you use territories like, say it's going on Instagram, say it's going on a website, say it's going on 5 billboards in Jamaica, the US, England. So like, where is it going to end up? Where is it going to live? And then the media. I'm actually not sure what this one was referring to here because I don't use this one, but then, and then you can also set up a payment schedule. So like, say at start, you want to do 75%, and at the wrap, you get another percentage. You can also do it here. Most clients don't actually do this. They prefer net 30 because that's how long it takes for their sales to come in, so they can actually pay you. So most people don't really do this option. They just ask it in net 30. But this is like a scope of work that is helpful. So yeah, if you look up here, you'll see like equal sum, and then it'll show you where I'm summing from. So I can also change this. So if I need to make more, I can more to add, then it works for me. So this is like a rough sheet that I use, and then from this rough sheet, you can like constantly make changes, and then once everything is agreed on, you can do a final invoice, our final contract. So you cover all your bases before anybody's like, we didn't agree to this, you know? So, and then also I think another thing that's helpful is let me find it. This is not really, I won't say too long on this, but this is not related, but this is also what I was talking about. For if you're renting equipment for any type of shoot that you, let's say like you don't have to, if it's a shoot that requires lots of equipment, it's a bigger production, then this is kind of how you can organize and keep like all your gear and what you need to bring, and then the days that you're using it. So like if this is $50 a day, then and we do 5 days, then we know how much we're making. So yeah, it's also like a good way to track things. But
So
yeah, this is also
one thing I recall seeing, well, I see commercial photographers do it.
yeah.
Even if they own all the gear, they add a rental line for gear rental in their quote or invoicing.
Yes,
Do,
you
do
can do
you
that.
do that practice, or you only do that for items
I
you rent?
I don't advise that. Because for this shoot, all I provided for this shoot, this other shoot that I'm showing you, all I provided was my tether cable and my tripod. Um, for this shoot, everything else was rented. Because like I didn't own some of that gear, so everything else was just rented. But what I'd recommend is definitely like if what I'd recommend is if it's a lot of gear, like you're providing almost everything, then include a rental price. But if it's something like a tripod, there's really no point because the client's goal is obviously always to retain money. They don't want to spend more than they have to. So so like unless you're providing a lot, if you're just providing a camera, don't rent. But if you're providing a camera, the lighting, the grip, then I would definitely recommend, renting. But yeah, that's how I do now, how I do like my rough sheets before I send a final invoice to somebody. And I'll look for like what the final, not final invoice, I'll look for what the final contract really looks like really quickly. But yeah, that is how I would that's how I do it.
Okay. That's a
And you can
good
use any
uh,
amount. Like it doesn't have to be some big job. It doesn't have to be a big job. It could be $100, it could be $200, but like it's a good way to just outline how you're gonna, do things and what is agreed on.
Okay. Sounds good. For those who may want to,
Dwayne, excuse me, did you see my request of Karsten?
oh, yeah. He responded to say he could.
So he could send it to you and you, whoever is interested, you contact
Yeah,
you.
I'm working on editing it so I can clear all the info and everybody can add in how they want to add it. But yeah,
Thanks a million.
it's a good way to track it.
I just here for a second. So I mentioned that you could so with the review of the images by the client, if you can see where my cursor is here, so these are the individual file names, and I just place the file names in this search filter for it to narrow down all the images to the set that the client chose. The other thing I mentioned was the exporting. So at the top left here, chapter 1 calls them export recipes. So it gives you some default ones, and then you can create additional ones for your needs. So like here, this one I have 3500 pixels for clients. So I'll set this as a JPEG full quality resolution of 300 pixels per inch, dimensions 3500 pixels on the long edge, and this is a client delivery, so the image is supposed to be print ready. So I do output shortening for print. And once you do an export, any one of these are ticked, then the program is going to go through and export all the images to five times at the varying dimensions and settings. All right, so, and are there any questions as we wrap up the session?
What are we doing for the next one?
The next session is supposed to be a judging for the photo competition. There is next theme is stop motion story time. So persons are supposed to go out, research how to do stop motion photography, and in a sense tell a story using that process.
Nice. I wanted to see if anybody would be interested in signing up for so there's a place in America called Art Partner. They are a photography representative agency, so they represent photographers to clients. and they're hosting something called Create COP29, and that basically is like a response to climate change. And it's like it's an open call, so anybody from anywhere in the world, no matter where, can apply. And how it will work is if you do end up winning, so basically you're just making an image in response to climate change. So you can do it in any way: video, photo, painting, however. And you make a response to climate change. And the prize that they have is, so they have prizes starting at $2,000 USD to $5,000 to $10,000. And I was thinking of signing up for it and really trying my hand at it. And I thought it'd be good for other people to know about it, because they fund you with money that goes towards like whatever you want it to. It's like a cash prize. So anywhere in the world, it's not US limited. It's not American limited. It's an open call from anywhere in the world. So I mean, I should put a link in, but it'd be really cool if everybody could, if you're interested in like making some type of art related to, and deadline is October 31st. So it's all the time. But yeah, should be really cool. If anybody's interested in signing up for that and making any type of art related to climate change.
I would definitely be interested to give it a try.
All
Yeah,
right.
I just put a
So,
link. I just put a link in the chat.
I'll share it to the community and see who would be willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, I think it should be really good to try it out. And yeah, they do have some. Other people were kind of weirded out about why they had an age limit. If you're if you're over 30, I would just lie about my age. I don't know why they have an age limit for some reason. But
That would
it's
probably get you disqualified.
no, you just do it through somebody else. But yeah, I don't know why they have that, but they have a bunch of. If you go on that website that I just sent, they have a lot of like open competition going on right now. Open calls and everything. So I would definitely, and fellowships that are not limited to by age or anything at all. So I would definitely recommend people to check out this site and try your hand at it. They have art galleries, all sorts of stuff that they're doing, and it isn't limited by country or anything at all. So I would definitely, recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It'd be really cool.
All right, so I think we'll cut off here. Carson, read the contracts. Once you've made the modifications, you can send it to me and I'll
Yeah.
distribute it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clear it so everybody can input their information, and also extend the field so people who might do way more deliverables than me. I'm gonna extend the field and put the sum back in so that way you can have like space to make your changes.
All right,
Yeah.
no problem. All right, thanks everyone for joining this evening. I hope you found it insightful. I hope you found something that you can incorporate into your workflow to make things a little better for you. If nothing is taken away, ensure that the backup strategy is implemented in some way, shape, or form, so you don't have heartache. All right,
Dwayne, really appreciate this. You're sharing so willingly with all of us. We're new to the formal side of photography, and with all of your knowledge and with it, especially in technology, it's good for us to know all of these things and what's available in this changing world to make life easier for us and more efficient. So thank you. And Karsten was also very helpful with his experience in the first world.
You're
Yes, I
welcome.
try.
All right, so have a good evening, everyone. Have a good rest of the week.
Same to
Alright.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, and same to you.
All right, take care, Sean.